Hello everyone, I'm here today to refute Moses' speech that genetically modified organisms have a positive effect on the overall health of the population. To start off, I'll give a brief explanation of what genetic modification is exactly. Genetic engineering is a radical new technology that forces genetic information across the protective species barrier in an unnatural way. Much of the products for sale in our markets contain GMOs, or genetically modified organisms, that are not government regulated or labeled. My main proposition is that GMOs are unsafe, unnatural, and therefore unhealthy for the human race. My supporting claims are that GMOs do not decrease the use of pesticides. GMOs are not proven by the FDA to be safe or healthy for the population. And lastly, that GMOs do not decrease disease or the effects of allergies in humans. My first supporting claim is that GMOs do not decrease the use of pesticides on crops. Like Moses, many believe that organisms can be adequately transformed through genetic modification to be resistant to pests, and therefore eliminate the use of pesticides in our farms. Like I said, this could not be further from the truth. In fact, U.S. government data shows that in the U.S., GM crops have produced an overall increase, not decrease, in pesticide use compared to conventional crops. Bill Christensen, president of the U.S. National Family Farm Coalition, stated, "The promise was that you could use less chemicals and produce a greater yield, but let me tell you, none of this is true." While my opposition included BT corn as an example as a safe GMO, in actuality there exists a murkiness of its long-term effects on environmental and human health, which are the same concerns expressed about other genetically modified foods. My second claim is that GMOs are not proven to be safe or healthy for human consumption. Genetic modification is a crude and imprecise way of incorporating foreign material from viruses and bacteria into crops with unpredictable consequences. The resulting GM foods have undergone little rigorous and long-term safety testing, but animal feeding tests have shown worrying health effects. It is claimed by the opposition that Americans have eaten GM foods for years with no ill effects, but instead that they have increased vitamins and nutritional value. These foods are completely unlabeled in the U.S. and nobody has monitored the consequences. This means that there's no proof that vitamins or nutritional value has increased with genetic modified foods. That is probably why my opposition did not include any evidence for his claim. Dr. Suzanne Worthley, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency toxicologist, states that we are confronted with the most powerful technology the world has ever known, and it is being rapidly destroyed with almost no thought whatsoever of its consequences. Although shelf life can be increased, this is because once organisms have been genetically modified, they become unnatural. And with the obesity and health problems facing our nation today, more unnatural food stocking our grocery stores can only worsen the problems. Another point brought up by my opposition is allergens. He believes that GMOs can successfully rid the world of allergy-causing proteins through the insertion of a single gene, but this is in fact not the case. It is impossible to rid the world of allergy and disease no matter how many genes you want to pervade our natural organisms with. The world is filled with so many billions of proteins and organisms that it is impossible to actively eliminate every single allergen from the world. We cannot live in a completely sterile world. The idea of eliminating disease through genetic modification is also incorrect because diseases are constantly changing into newer strands and forms at a rate that is impossible to keep up with. Anyhow, if that were the case, if we could rid the world of disease through genetic modification, why haven't we already done so? There are many alternatives to genetic modification. Integrated pest management and other innovative and low-input or organic methods of controlling pests and boosting yields have proven highly effective, particularly in the developing world. Other plant breeding technologies, such as marker-assisted selection, which is a non-GM genetic mapping, are widely expected to boost global agricultural productivity and more effective and safe than genetic modification. Once again, my main claim was that GMOs are not beneficial for the overall health of the human race. This claim is supported by my first secondary claims that GMOs have increased pesticide use in American farms. My second secondary claim that GMOs are proven unsafe and unnatural, And that lastly, GMOs cannot and will not rid the world of allergens or disease. Thank you. Do I give? Never mind.
I'm here. I wanted to hear it.
Really?
No.
All right, you state the advocate's main claim. You present a counterclaim and a series of secondary claims that you then attempt to use to respond to the advocate's structure. I think you need to be clear on what the advocate's supporting points are a little bit more so that we can tell whether or not the supporting claims that you present indeed do respond to those points. I think the first and the second point probably are applicable. The third one sounds like it's an argument against a generic idea about genetically modified foods, for instance, and not specific to the advocate's claim. On the first point, there's not really much analysis of the advocate's evidence. You've got one piece of information that suggests that there's actually an increased use of pesticide, and the source you cite there is okay. There was another argument about other effects and applications that came very quickly. It sounds like it's a counterclaim to a policy. On the uncertainty on the consequences, that's the same sort of thing. It sounds like it's a disadvantage to the policy instead of an result of or a response to the claims being presented by the advocate. On the third point that you present, this is where I think you've got some of those fallacies built in here. We've got an appeal to ignorance and a shift in the burden of proof. You know, why haven't they done so already? That's not proof that it doesn't have an effect. That's just one of those kinds of arguments that leads to a circular conclusion. So I like the way it's organized. It's fairly easy to follow. You do want to make sure that it applies specifically to the claims that they're presenting. There's not a lot of analysis of the advocate's evidence or reasons. And like I said, the third counterclaim seems like it's not necessarily applicable to the specifics that the advocate presented. All right, thank you. Nicole?